What is up, guys? Ivan here with getivan.com. In this video, we're going to be going through a variety of steps to hosting your static website using BunnyCDN and its storage system. The benefit of using BunnyCDN over something like Cloudflare and Azure or GCP as a storage system and CDN would be unlimited edge rules. So edge rules are these things that BunnyCDN can implement that allow you to do things like 301 redirects, whereas with Cloudflare, you get a limit of 3 page rules, which is a similar type of technology. So if you need to migrate a site from WordPress to static environment, for example, you can't really do that with Cloudflare as a CDN because it would require a lot of redirects. Another good reason would be your ability to limit the use of data per pull zone in BunnyCDN. So with client projects, you can limit their packages without needing a software as a service scalable billing system. So you can just charge your clients retainers and limit the data use on those packages, for example. So there's a whole lot of benefits, and we'll go through them as we go through the steps here. So let's just begin this process. Once you sign up for BunnyCDN, you'll just go to the storage area, add storage zone, and go from here. Before we do this, though, let's go through the process of. Let me touch briefly on the DNS setup. So with Bunny, you still want to use Cloudflare as a DNS provider. There are other options like Cloud DNS, for example, but they're a lot more expensive. And with Cloudflare, it doesn't cost anything. So, well, it doesn't cost anything except for DNS lookups. So when you're using a DNS provider, when you're using Cloudflare as a DNS provider and not as a proxy service, then, or not a proxy service, but not proxying through Cloudflare to use their CDN, you still pay for about 500,000 lookups in terms of the domain lookups. So it's like 50 cents per 500,000 or something like that. It's really cheap, but you still need an external DNS system because Bunny does not provide their own DNS solution. So I recommend either Cloudflare or Cloud DNS. Anyways, to go through this process, obviously you'll type in a domain when you go to add site, then you go to the free plan, and it's probably going to find a whole lot of records here, but you basically will go through this process, keep clicking continue, the default settings. Eventually it will give you the name servers, which are right here, brett.ns.cloudflare.com and ines.ns.cloudflare.com. And so you just need to find in your domain name registrar's settings, there will be an area that says custom name servers or edit name servers, so on and so forth. You need to change the name servers to these right here, Brett and Ines. And once that's saved and it's propagated, then you can, of course, use Cloudflare as a DNS system, and you'll need to use some kind of DNS provider, obviously, to use Bunny storage and content delivery. So for the sake of this example, I'm using a photography asset, sharonshots.org. You can't put any dots here. So in this area for adding a storage zone, I would just put Sharon Shots or sharonshots-org. And then they added this Geo Replication recently. So over here, you would want to select your main area. They've got Europe, USA, and Asia. So I would put USA, and then the redundancy would basically just be the cheapest option, which I think is Europe. Because Bunny, I think the company itself is based in Europe, in Germany or something like that. But they have, if you look at their CDN points of presence, they do have distribution in the United States. So that's a whole other topic. Bunny is one of the top content delivery networks. They don't have as many points of presence. I think they have something like 40 points of presence, whereas Cloudflare has something like 150. So with Cloudflare, you're going to get a whole lot more points of presence, and the bandwidth is free and unlimited, and it's going to be really good for huge assets like mass page sites, for example. But with Bunny, there's a whole lot of benefits to sites that require more granular control. They have features that make managing smaller, say, the average client site, for example, a lot easier. They have an API, and so on and so forth. So, okay, let's move on here. So you'll click Add there, and it'll bring you to a screen like this, which has the file manager. You can use this system in most. There's a lot of bucket storage that will have a web-based file management system, but in my experience so far, they've all been set up to where you can add a file, or you can add a folder, or you can add a series of files, but doesn't seem to be a way to add multiple files and folders. So you can't just simply, pull up a folder and then just drag everything in that folder and drag it over. From what I've seen, I mean, the point is that it's easier to use an FTP client, and this is a type of bucket storage that, as you can see over here, there's FTP and API access. So let's go to that area here, and I'll talk about setting it up. I do recommend that you use something like CyberDuck. I like CyberDuck because it has some shortcut stuff and things for connecting to a Microsoft Azure bucket, and also to Google Cloud Storage as a bucket. As you can see here, they've got Amazon S3 and Backblaze, obviously Google Drive, things like that. And they're also a typical FTP, SFTP client. You can also use, since Bunny gives you credentials for FTP access, you can just use something like FileZilla. But anyways, let's take a look here. And I've already kind of added some files, but if we take a look at the bookmarks, you'll see I've already created this Sharon Shots FTP access to this bucket. But once you get into CyberDuck, you'll just right-click and then go to New Bookmark, and it'll bring up something like this. So on this drop-down, you'll just select FTP SSL right here, this option. And then under nickname, you can name this whatever you want. So I just usually use the brand name, or the brand name with the TLD. So like SharonShots.org, for example. And then the server is actually the host name in this case. And then you can see port and connection type and username. Those are all synonymous with this system. So you would just paste that host name here under server. You can see port 21 here. Username is Sharon Shots. And as you add these things, it'll change the access URL. And then you want to paste the password last, otherwise it won't save. And you've got to make sure to reveal the password and then copy it revealed and then paste it. And it will paste in MD5E encrypted, or whatever that salt and pepper hash is called. But you have to paste it last. Otherwise, if you change something afterwards, it'll view that as a different login variation. It's kind of dumb that they have it set up like that. I also recommend make sure that you paste the credentials. This is kind of a new thing. I've noticed recently that if I type things into these fields, then CyberDuck will throw up this crashing error that you can see here. It wants you to report this crash, and I've been sending these errors, but for like the past week, it hasn't been updated or fixed yet. But I've noticed that if I just ignore it, I can just keep using the program. So that's kind of a weird quirk that it's very recent. Anyways, under connect mode, you can set this to passive. That might actually be the default. I'm not really sure. So, and then the rest you really shouldn't need to change. You don't need to change the path. It's just the root of that bucket. And then you can just hit the X mark and it'll save. And to connect, you can just double click. So if it throws you an error, and CyberDuck is kind of finicky at times, you have to do everything perfectly, But once you figure that out, exactly the way to structure things, depending on the connection you're doing, then there shouldn't be any problems. So this is already set up. Once you get that set up, then you'll need to go to connect a pull zone. And let me skip ahead to I already have a pull zone created. So here's my pull zone for this project. And once you come in here the first time, then this will be turned off. So you want to make sure to check off Force SSL. And this explains here that host names can be used instead of our default bcdn.net host name. So to point the host name to our servers, create the CNAME record, yada, yada, yada. So if you wanted to, you could create something like cdn.sharonsshots.org. If you wanted to point a particular host name to, your own custom host name that is then pointed to this host name. So I'm not sure what the point is of that. Maybe it has something to do with branding, perhaps. I guess if you wanted to conceal that from a client that you were using a particular CDN, then the average client wouldn't be able to figure out that, what it was being used, perhaps. But that's I'm not too concerned about that. Maybe I should be thinking about the purity of the brand. I don't know, but I'm just going to connect it to this subdomain. Now, that might be more relevant, like if you're trying to connect your root domain, for example. Excuse me, but I'm just trying to connect. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter either way, but I'm just going to create a I'm going to have my subdomain point to this this BunnyCDN address here. So I'm going to add www.sharonsshots.org. And just a quick note on this. I typed this in the other day, earlier, and I couldn't get it to work for a while. And I was like, what's going on? And then I realized that I just misspelled the domain name by a letter. So if you have any problems, it probably has to do with your own, little taxonomy or spelling issues or whatever. You're missing a dot somewhere, So anywho, let me add this sharonsshots.org. And then this is a point where you need to go into your DNS provider. In my case, it's Cloudflare, and you need to set your record. So it says here to create a CNAME record to this address. So I am going to grab this address here, which is obviously this right here, as you can see. I'm going to come over here to, let me close this. I'm going to come over here to the DNS controls, and this is a point where I would add a record, click the drop down, go to CNAME, and then type www, and then paste in that string, which is basically this right here. I already did this before. Now, it's important when you're working with BunnyCDN and you're using Cloudflare as a DNS to make sure that you uncheck the proxy. It needs to be DNS only, because when you proxy it through Cloudflare, you're only serving, you're basically trying to, it's like you're trying to use Cloudflare CDN and security reverse proxy stuff, You need to make it DNS only so that you can allow Bunny to be your CDN in this case. So then obviously you click save on that, and none of the page rules or any of the other settings that I've shown in past videos will work when you're just using Cloudflare as a DNS. So basically, you also need to create a record for the root to go through BunnyCDN. So as you can see here, I created a CNAME just on the root, and what that looks like is you go down to this drop down CNAME, and then as you can see, it says use the @ symbol for the root. So you type the @ symbol, and then you paste the exact same address, and then you uncheck the proxy. So this will allow you to this will allow you to ensure that you're able to give instructions here on this for this domain, depending on what you want to do here. When you look at this I, it says another record shares the same name, so we've applied Cname Flattening. So this is a huge benefit of Cloudflare as a DNS provider. They provide Cname Flattening, also known as domain name aliasing, or there's a variety of names. I can't remember them all right now, but it's a sort of trick DNS trick. It's technically not kosher DNS policy, and so I'm kind of in the habit now of using the www with all new assets. But there are some assets like getivan.com, for example, which I'm in the process of migrating from WordPress into a static environment where I will be using that Cname Flattening. So anyways, you've got your root and your subdomain pointed to that CDN address over in Bunny. And so depending on which way you want to redirect, you can then use Bunny edge rules to redirect one to the other. So these are both set properly, and we're basically good to go. The rest is kind of managed through Bunny. So under the pool zone, let me close this CyberDuck tab. Under the pool zone, we'll just need to enable. Now, it may take a few minutes for that to propagate, the DNS to propagate. So between changing your name servers and changing any given record, it may take 5 minutes a piece. For example, it's usually pretty fast. So I'm going to enable this. It looks like I spelled this correctly. I'm going to get a free certificate and then click continue. It should be pretty fast. That's all done, and it'll refresh the page, and then we just force this SSL. Don't think I need to add the. I don't think you even can add the root here. Actually, so we'll just do we'll set up a redirect in the edge rules. Let's briefly go over some of these other options back here. Sorry, I was just looking at some of this other stuff. I was looking at, you can purge here this whole pool zone from this area, but there's another area, I think it's in the overview, or here it is, or maybe this is it right here. And in this area, you can paste specific pages, and that's really useful when you're debugging and testing things out. Okay, so moving on, you don't need to really change anything in this area. You're welcome to look at it, of course. Here under the pricing section, you can actually, you can actually turn off delivery to foreign locations. For example, if you're serving a local business in some city or variety of cities in the U.S. who doesn't really do business outside of a 10-mile radius, you don't necessarily need to serve traffic from Asia, South Africa, South America, even Europe. But so you could technically turn these other places off and maybe limit roaming bot traffic that might be costing you some pennies or something like that. And speaking of pricing, and also along these lines, you can actually use the edge rules, I believe, to specifically, so it might be the traffic manager. You can serve specific versions of your website to specific locations. So different languages of your website, perhaps. And I guess if you wanted to get really granular, then you could serve specific versions to specific cities, perhaps, if you didn't want to really do any typical SEO. And it's kind of a weird use case, but anywho, so in terms of billing, I believe that you're charged a minimum of $1 per month. So I've been using after the trial, as you can see here, I put like $10 in here, and so I've been using it for like 2 months. So that's just a quick note there. Most of your traffic for a lot of sites will be extremely negligible. As you can see here, this is a penny per gig. So it's tough to get up to a gig with the average website, with the average client website, right? So it will go a very long way. It's very scalable. Okay, so let's go to, do I want to go to any of these? I don't think I need to go to any of these settings here. Traffic manager, headers, optimizer. Let's cover the optimizer. You can, if you know what to do with this stuff, you can look at this stuff. This is like a bonus feature, an add-on for like $10 a month per zone. You can turn this thing on that will enable web compression and CSS minification. And I do this at the file level, but it depends on how you're building your assets, Cloudflare offers a similar feature for free, I believe. Automatic image optimization, so bringing them down to a particular size, and then of course watermarking images automatically. And so as you can guess, that would be really useful for a photographer, for example, and maybe some other niches. So I thought that was pretty cool. This origin shield is pretty new. I'm not really familiar with that. And then here we've got network limits. And so this is the area where you can limit a particular pool zone to a certain amount of gigabytes. So if you had different packages with different data use, you could limit the actual, you could ensure that specific clients, maybe are not using a ton of data unexpectedly. You're able to keep clients within the budget of the retainer that you're charging them. So I thought that was pretty cool. Then we've got edge rules. So this is an important area. Now let's go to add an edge rule, and I'll show you. So there's a variety of things you can do. You're welcome to read these in your own time. The main one I'm concerned with is redirect to URL. So this is the redirect URL. So this is where they're going. So you might want them to go to this place, and then the triggers section lets you add conditions that also support wildcards. As you can see here, it says it supports wildcards. So you can add a condition if the requested URL matches XYZ, and you can obviously use wildcards for formulas, then redirect to this place. So pretty useful, and to my knowledge, you can add an unlimited number of them. Match any, match all, match none, condition triggers. So pretty cool. Let's go ahead and take a look at, I think it's, well, actually, let's add a rule here. Redirection URL should be, I want this to be the subdomain, so it should be www.sharonshots.org /, it should be $1, right? Let's see if I can, I wanted to see those wildcard instructions again. So forward redirect to URL. Multiple triggers. Triggers can be used on full URLs or use wildcard matching, for example. I'm not actually sure if if the wildcard thing works here. Shots.org, like it does in Cloudflare. Let's try this. Let's see what happens. It might not work properly. Let's add a condition if the requested URL matches Sharon's shots.org / boom. I may not have done this correctly. I haven't done this. I would need to look at like a cheat sheet or something. I haven't done this as much as the Cloudflare one until recently. Let's go ahead and do that. Save this edge rule. Let's see if this worked. So let me open up this here. Let's go to sharonshots.org. www.sharonshots.org. So that works. And then that's just a regular coming soon page, obviously. But apparently I did something wrong with my redirect URL. Give me 1 second to fix that. Okay, so it looks like I accidentally forgot to include the root in the linked host names. Even though I had the DNS pointed up here, as you can see, and we saw the error page, like when we went to this root, we saw the BunnyCDN error page. So it was definitely pointing there, but we have to also include it in the host names here so that the instructions on the edge rules will apply. So you have to make sure to include the whatever subdomain you're using, and you're trying to redirect also, like, and the root in order for it to work. Excuse me. So yeah, and then the formula, I was way off. I had to check my cheat sheets, and let me show you what it really is. It's way different than Cloudflare. On the redirect URL, you have to put this double curly bracket here for the path. You know how Spintax tools use this kind of thing, except it's got to be doubled up. And you don't put a / otherwise it'll double up, because it actually repeats the / from down here. So you just do path, this path on the end of your URL. And then under conditions, request URL match any, and then this is where you put the root, but you have to put a wildcard before the : / That way, if it's HTTP or HTTPS, then it will redirect either one. If either one of those are entered in, then it'll redirect appropriately. But it's also forced HTTPS anyways from the host name. And at the end of the URL, we've got the / and then the wildcard is a star. So kind of a lot going on there. I'll try to put these formulas at some point below this video in the description. But yeah, let me show you the result here. If I go to sharonshots.org, it redirects to the subdomain version. And if I go to sharonshots.org / whatever, then it'll redirect to 404 page of the subdomain of the site. Speaking of the 404 page, when you transfer your files via CyberDuck, all you have to do is double click on that bookmark and then drag your files. Quick note on the files, you have to have a folder titled BunnyCDN_errors, and that's where you have to store the 404 page, because they don't have a web UI or like an option indicator of where you can indicate the index page or the 404 page. Like, I believe it just automatically detects index.html for the index page, and then it will detect whatever you put inside the BunnyCDN errors folder, it will use as the error page. I believe that's how that works. So yeah, it's a little bit more complicated in certain areas than some other methods, but yeah, I mean, that's basically finished, and there's statistics on usage, and you can custom purge pages. This user interface I'm not going to go through all of it over here because I have some sensitive data in here, but it's very pleasant to use, and it's all in one, and it's fairly easy. Like, there's a process you have to get used to, but at the end of the road, it's pretty much as easy as any other static website method. And they also have an API. So I don't know I don't know if I can get there from here, but actually I think their front end is separate. Let's see. I was looking at this dynamic variables page where they talk about path. This guy, by the way, Dijon, he's really helpful. If you ever get him in a support ticket, he really makes it a great experience. Let's see if I can get to the homepage from here. So here are the API docs, and if you're familiar with this kind of stuff, you will probably agree that this stuff is very clean. Very, very organized. You've got table of contents over here. You've got your core areas from those contents, and then you have your examples and your attributes over here. So I haven't done anything with the API yet, so that's a long-term goal. But it looks to me like it's structured pretty well. Let's take a look at some of their parameters briefly. You got pool zone, You've got a whole lot of pull zone options over here. Storage zone, pull zone, statistics, billing. You can even modify the billing here. Pretty cool. But that's basically all I have to share. Just, navigating the addition of a website to their storage buckets and then to their pull zones. And on the other end, you're hosting a site through BunnyCDN. And you're able to manage those files through an FTP client like CyberDuck. So that's pretty much it. Appreciate you guys watching, and please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.